The first thing Elias Rourke noticed was the silence. Not the comforting kind, no gentle hum of engines, no background chatter from crew channels, but a deliberate, watchful quiet, as if the station itself were holding its breath. The orbital platform Astra Vault drifted in the shadow of a dying blue star, its vast circular corridors lit by concentric rings of amber and gold that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. Elias adjusted the collar of his civilian jacket as the security doors sealed behind him. He wasn't military. That had been made abundantly clear during every background scan, every pause that lasted half a second too long. He was here because of what he knew, not who he was. A civilian systems linguist, former cognitive engineer, specialist in translation layer failures between artificial intelligences and non-human command architectures, which meant he was the person people called when something powerful stopped obeying its own rules. "Proceed forward," the station AI intoned. Female voice, neutral, carefully impersonal. "Do not deviate from the illuminated path." But Elias followed the light, boots echoing softly against polished metal. He'd read the briefings on the way in, classified sections redacted, others frustratingly vague, but one name had survived every filter: Nyxara Valen, Supreme Executor of the Aurelian Compact, Strategic Commander, Political Enforcer, the woman whose decisions had ended 3 wars and quietly erased 2 rebellions before they ever reached public awareness. And now, according to the emergency summons that had pulled Elias from a quiet life planetside, she was experiencing cognitive irregularities, which was bureaucratic language for something is wrong, and we don't understand it. The corridor widened into a vast circular chamber. Rings of light arched overhead, creating a tunnel-like effect that drew the eye inexorably toward the center. She was already there. Nyxara stood alone beneath the central halo, tall and impossibly still, as if she'd been sculpted rather than born. Platinum blonde hair fell in soft waves over one shoulder, stark against the black, form-fitting command attire that left no doubt about her authority or her physical presence. The material gleamed subtly under the lights, structured yet fluid, designed for dominance rather than comfort. Her eyes, green, luminous, unsettlingly focused, locked onto Elias the moment he crossed the threshold. He stopped without meaning to, not out of fear, out of instinct. Something in her gaze felt calibrated, as if she weren't merely looking at him but measuring the space he occupied, the choices he hadn't yet made. "You are late," she said. Her voice was low, controlled, carrying an accent Elias couldn't place. Not alien exactly, but refined beyond any single culture. Each word landed with precision. "I arrived within the approved window," Elias replied carefully. "Docking clearance delayed me." She studied him for a long moment. He noticed the markings then, thin, angular sigils beneath her eyes, dark and deliberate, not decorative, functional. Neural interface traces, according to the classified addendum he'd skimmed too quickly. "Excuses are irrelevant," Nyxara said. "Results are not." A familiar tightening settled in Elias' chest. He'd dealt with powerful people before, corporate magnates, military directors, synthetic councils, but this was different. There was no bluster in her authority, no need to assert it. She simply was. "You requested a civilian specialist," he said. "Your council could have assigned any number of internal analysts." "They have failed," Nyxara replied without hesitation. "You have not." That stopped him, not praise, not accusation. A statement of fact. She stepped closer. The air shifted with her movement, subtle but undeniable. Elias became acutely aware of the distance between them shrinking, of how carefully measured every step was. "There is a system aboard this station," she continued, "older than the compact itself. A command intelligence designed to respond only to my authority. Recently, it has begun hesitating." "Hesitating how?" Elias asked. Her lips parted slightly, then closed again as if she were choosing her words with uncommon care. "It waits," she said, "for confirmation, not of my commands but of my intent." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. That shouldn't be possible. No, Nyxara agreed, it should not. She stopped an arm's length away from him, close enough now that he could see the faint tension in her posture, contained, disciplined, but present. You specialize in threshold failures, she said quietly. Moments where systems begin to behave almost as if they are questioning themselves. Yes, Elias replied, usually because someone built empathy into something that was never meant to have it. Nyxara's gaze sharpened. Then tell me, Elias Rourke, she said, lowering her voice just enough to make the moment feel private despite the vast chamber. What happens when a system designed to obey begins? The guest quarters assigned to Elias were immaculate, silent, and carefully impersonal. Exactly the kind of space designed to make a visitor feel tolerated rather than welcomed. The lights adjusted automatically to his circadian rhythm, the temperature calibrated to human comfort standards, and the door sealed with a soft hydraulic sigh that felt final in a way he didn't like. He stood there for a moment, hands on his hips, letting the stillness settle. Nyxara Valen. Even now, her presence lingered like an afterimage burned into his awareness. Elias had been around authority his entire adult life, but this was different. She hadn't tried to intimidate him, hadn't needed to. The weight of her attention alone had been enough to make his instincts sharpen, his thoughts align. That was dangerous. He activated his wrist console and pulled up the limited system access he'd been granted, predictably restricted, surface-level diagnostics, no core permissions, no direct interface with the command intelligence itself. She wanted him close, but not in control, smart. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Elias Rourke, the station AI said. Supreme Executor Valen has requested your presence in the central nexus. Already, he exhaled slowly and headed back into the corridor. This time, the illuminated path shifted as he walked, subtly guiding him deeper into the station's inner ring. The air felt warmer here, charged. The lights dimmed incrementally, amber giving way to a richer gold that reflected off curved metallic walls. The Nexus chamber was smaller than the main hall, but denser. Cables and light conduits arched overhead like neural pathways, converging toward a raised platform at the center. Nyxara stood there again, hands clasped behind her back. She hadn't changed, which meant she'd been waiting. You move quietly, she said without turning. Most humans announce themselves with unnecessary sound. I try not to waste energy, Elias replied. Efficiency is not common among your species. She turned then, slow and deliberate. The green of her eyes seemed brighter here, reflecting the system light. The markings beneath them, interface sigils, flickered faintly, as if responding to something unseen. You requested unrestricted observation access, she continued. I have authorized a controlled demonstration. A ripple of anticipation moved through him. Demonstration of what exactly? Instead of answering, Nyxara lifted one hand. The lights shifted. The hum beneath the floor deepened, resonating through Elias' bones rather than his ears. Lines of golden light flared across the chamber walls, converging on a crystalline structure suspended above the platform, angular, ancient, and unmistakably non-human. The core, Nyxara said. The Aurelian command intelligence, it does not speak. It does not converse, it responds. The crystal pulsed. Elias felt it then, not sound, not pressure, but a sensation like standing too close to a massive gravitational body. Awareness bending inward. Authorized command input, Nyxara said. The crystal brightened. Issue directive, Elias murmured. Nyxara's voice cut through the hum with perfect clarity. Reconfigure defensive lattice to protocol obsidian. Normally that would have been the end of it. Instead, the light hesitated, just a fraction of a second, barely measurable. But Elias felt it immediately, a hitch in the flow that shouldn't exist in a system this advanced. Nyxara's jaw tightened. Again she said the command, slower this time, more deliberate. The core responded, but not before that same infinitesimal pause. It's not malfunctioning, Elias said quietly. It's checking. Nyxara's eyes flicked to him, checking what? You. The silence that followed was not artificial, it was personal. That system was built to mirror its primary authority, Elias continued carefully. Not just your commands, but your internal coherence, your certainty. If it's hesitating, it's because it's detecting a divergence. A weakness, she said flatly. No, he corrected before he could stop himself. A conflict. Her gaze sharpened dangerously. For a moment, Elias wondered if he'd overstepped. Then she surprised him. Explain, Nyxara said, not command, not threat. Request. Elias took a step closer to the platform, eyes never leaving the core. You've built your authority on decisiveness, on absolute alignment between intent and action. But something in you is paused. The markings beneath her eyes glowed faintly now. Be precise, she said. There's a choice you're delaying, Elias continued. Not because you can't make it, but because once you do, you won't be able to pretend you're unchanged. Nyxara's breathing shifted, controlled, measured but deeper. The core pulsed again, brighter this time. You are suggesting, she said slowly, that my own hesitation is compromising the compact's most sacred system. I'm suggesting, Elias replied, voice steady despite the weight of her attention, that the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And what is that? To wait, he said, until you decide who you are going to be next. For a long moment, Nyxara said, the first breach came quietly. No alarms, no raised voices, no overt defiance, just a question that should not have been asked. Elias noticed it only after the moment had passed, after the core's pulse stabilized and the golden light settled into a steady rhythm, after Nyxara turned away from the platform as if nothing fundamental had shifted. She began walking toward the secondary exit, clearly expecting him to follow. He did. They moved in silence through the inner corridors, the walls here closer, the curves tighter, the lighting warmer and deliberately subdued. This section of the station was not designed for command displays or public authority. It was meant for reflection, for decisions made without witnesses. Nyxara stopped before a translucent panel overlooking the star. The dying blue sun filled the viewport, its light fractured by layers of polarized shielding. You should return to your quarters, she said. I will authorize expanded access tomorrow. Why not now? Elias asked. She turned slowly. That was not an instruction, she said. I know, he replied. It was curiosity. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but assessment. Curiosity is rarely harmless, Nyxara said. Neither is suppression, Elias answered, before he could second-guess himself. The silence that followed felt heavier than any threat. Nyxara studied him with that same unsettling intensity, as if recalibrating an internal model. Elias didn't look away. He wasn't sure when that had become a choice rather than instinct. You speak as though you understand restraint, she said, yet you continue to press. I understand it intimately, Elias replied. I've built my entire life around it. That caught her attention. Explain. Not a command, a crack. Elias exhaled slowly. I walked away from positions that promised influence because they required constant performance, constant alignment with expectations that weren't mine. I chose obscurity because it was quieter. Nyxara's gaze didn't waver. And yet you accepted this summons, she said. You stepped into the center of power, rather than remaining invisible. Yes, Elias said, because you didn't summon me to perform. You summoned me because something inside your system, and inside you, wasn't quiet anymore. The markings beneath her eyes flickered, brighter this time, the interface reacting not to command but to proximity. You are dangerously perceptive, Nyxara said softly. That's what happens when you spend years listening to things that aren't allowed to speak, Elias replied. Her breath slowed. Then she did something unexpected. She moved closer, not with the predatory confidence of a ruler asserting dominance, but with measured intent, as if testing the boundary between them. The space narrowed. Elias became acutely aware of the difference in height, in presence, in heat. You assume, Nyxara said quietly, that my hesitation is personal. I don't assume, Elias answered. I observe. And what have you observed? She asked. He hesitated, just long enough to be honest. That you've built an empire on certainty, he said. And now you're facing something that doesn't respond to authority alone. Her eyes darkened. You, she said. Yes. The words settled between them, undeniable. The station's ambient hum deepened almost imperceptibly. Elias felt it in his chest, a resonance that had no right to exist. Nyxara's jaw tightened. The core has begun adjusting its response thresholds when you are present. That made his pulse spike. That's not possible. It is, she said, and it is not behaving that way with anyone else. Elias took a careful step back, not out of fear but awareness. That's why you kept me at arm's length, he said, not to control me, but to see whether the effect persisted. Yes, and now? Her gaze dropped briefly to his mouth, then back to his eyes. Now, Nyxara said, I am considering the consequences of no longer maintaining distance. The air between them felt charged, fragile. Nyxara, Elias said quietly, deliberately using her name for the first time without permission. Why are you really hesitating? That was the second breach. This one echoed. Her eyes widened just slightly. The markings beneath them flared, then dimmed as if struggling to stabilize. Because, she said after a moment, voice lower than he'd ever heard it, the choice I am delaying cannot be unmade. Elias didn't interrupt. If I allow this, she continued, if I permit the core to recalibrate around something other than my authority alone, I will no longer be singular. And that frightens you, Elias said gently. It should, she replied. It would redefine the compact's understanding of power. And what does it redefine for you? He asked. Her breath caught just once, a small, involuntary break in perfect control. It would mean, Nyxara said, that I am no longer alone by design. The silence stretched intimate, exposed. Then the core pulsed, once, twice. Its light shifted subtly toward Elias. Nyxara noticed. Her eyes snapped to the platform, then back to him. You see, she said, almost accusing, it is already choosing. Elias swallowed. Sleep did not come easily. Elias lay on the narrow bunk in his quarters, lights dimmed to a simulated night, listening to the station breathe. He could feel it now, the subtle shifts in resonance, the way the ambient hum seemed to respond to his own awareness. The Astra Vault no longer felt like a neutral structure. It felt attentive. That disturbed him more than Nyxara's silence. He had just begun to drift when the lights brightened a fraction and the door chimed. Once. Not an alarm. Not a summons, a request. Enter, Elias said, already sitting up. The door slid open. Nyxara Valen stepped inside. She wore no ceremonial insignia, no command mantle. Her attire was still black, still severe, but softer somehow. Less armor, more intention. The markings beneath her eyes were dormant now, faint as shadows rather than signals. She did not cross the threshold immediately. You told me not to ask you to lie, she said. Her voice was steady, carefully controlled. Yes, Elias replied. I am not accustomed to truth without leverage, she continued. It creates vulnerability. Elias studied her in the low light. The way she held herself, erect, composed, yet hesitated at the doorway like someone standing at the edge of unfamiliar terrain. Then why are you here? He asked gently. Nyxara stepped inside. The door sealed behind her with a soft, definitive sound. Because the core altered its baseline parameters 37 minutes ago, she said. It did so without external stimulus. Elias frowned. That shouldn't. It keyed the adjustment to proximity, she finished. Mine and yours. That sent a slow, unmistakable chill through him. You're saying. I am saying, Nyxara interrupted, that when I chose not to override its behavior earlier, it interpreted that restraint as authorization. Elias stood. The space between them closed naturally, without either of them acknowledging the movement. He could feel her presence now like a low gravitational field, steady, controlled, but undeniably real. What did it change? He asked. Nyxara's eyes held his. It expanded its definition of command coherence. His pulse quickened, to include what? She took one measured breath, shared intent. The words settled heavily between them. That's not a system upgrade, Elias said quietly. That's a philosophical shift. Yes, Nyxara agreed. One I permitted. There it was, the first irreversible step. You understand what that means, Elias said. I understand, she replied. That the core now recognizes alignment not as obedience, but as convergence. She moved closer, not abruptly, not aggressively, deliberately. Elias felt the change immediately. The air warmed. The station's hum deepened, a subtle harmonic layering beneath the usual background noise. Somewhere beyond the walls the core responded. Nyxara noticed too. Her breath caught, not in fear but awareness. So this is how it feels, she murmured. Feels like what? Elias asked. To not be singular, she said. She stopped less than a step away from him, close enough that Elias could see the faint tension at the corners of her mouth. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin. Close enough that the choice between stepping back and staying still became suddenly significant. What are you doing? He asked softly. Nyxara's gaze flicked to his lips, then back to his eyes. Testing. Testing the system, Elias said. And myself, she corrected. Her hand lifted, slow, deliberate, and hovered near his chest without touching. The core reacted instantly. The lights shifted, not brighter but warmer gold bleeding into deeper amber. The hum beneath their feet synchronized into a steady rhythm that matched Elias' pulse far too closely to be coincidence. Nyxara froze. Her hand trembled. Just slightly. She lowered it, fingers curling into her palm as if grounding herself. It responds to restraint, she said, voice lower now. Not to dominance, not to command. Yes, Elias said, it's responding to choice. Her eyes darkened with something unreadable. If I cross this boundary, she said, the compact will not be able to pretend it is temporary. And if you do, Elias asked, then the core will continue to adapt without my consent, she said. And that is unacceptable. The honesty of it struck him. This wasn't about desire alone, or curiosity, or even connection. It was about control, not over him but over herself. Nyxara met his gaze fully now. I will ask you a question, she said. You may refuse to answer. Elias nodded, asked. Her voice softened, just enough to feel dangerous. Do you intend to remain an observer, she asked. Or are you? The core chamber had changed. Not structurally. Its geometry remained precise, symmetrical. But the atmosphere felt denser, as if the space itself had learned to anticipate presence. The golden light no longer waited to be activated. It pulsed softly, continuously, like a living thing in a state of attentive calm. Elias noticed it the moment he stepped inside. Nyxara was already there. She stood near the central platform, hands resting lightly at her sides, posture composed but not rigid. Today she wore the same black attire as before, yet something about it felt different, not softer, not revealing, but intentional in a way that acknowledged the body beneath rather than disguising it as authority. You're early, she said. I didn't sleep, Elias replied honestly. Neither did I, she almost said, but stopped herself. Instead, she turned toward the core. It has stabilized overnight. That shouldn't be possible without recalibration, Elias said, approaching the platform. And yet, Nyxara replied, it did. The crystal responded to his proximity immediately. Its internal light shifting in subtle gradients that mirrored neither human nor Aurelian design logic. Elias felt the resonance align with his breathing, slow and steady. It's anchoring, he murmured. Not to either of us individually, to the space between. Nyxara's gaze sharpened. Explain. Most command intelligences orient around a singular node, Elias said. A leader, a hierarchy. This one is distributing coherence. She absorbed that silently. If it completes that adaptation, he continued, it won't revert. Ever. Nyxara stepped closer. How close must we be, she asked quietly, for it to finalize? Elias hesitated. Physically, she clarified, yes. He met her eyes, close enough that the system can no longer treat proximity as incidental. Nyxara considered this. For the first time since they'd met, she did not immediately decide. Then slowly, deliberately, she removed the thin choker at her throat. Not a symbol of rank, but a neural dampener. Elias recognized the tech immediately. "That limits feedback," he said. "Yes," she replied, "and today I will not." She set it aside. The core reacted instantly. The hum deepened. The light warmed. The air seemed to tighten as if drawn inward. Nyxara's breath caught not in distress but awareness. "This is intense," she said, voice lower than usual. "You can stop," Elias said immediately. "Any time." But her gaze flicked to him, sharp, assessing. "I know." She stepped forward. The distance between them vanished. Elias became acutely aware of her height, her presence, the controlled power coiled beneath her stillness. Her hand lifted again, not hovering this time but coming to rest lightly against his chest. The contact was minimal. The effect was not. The core flared. Light surged through the chamber in concentric waves, the hum synchronizing into a harmonic resonance that vibrated through Elias' bones. Nyxara stiffened, fingers curling slightly as the feedback hit her. She exhaled sharply. "That response," Elias began. "I know," she interrupted, eyes darkening. "I feel it." Her hand remained where it was. The system stabilized around them, not accelerating, not escalating, settling. "This is the threshold," Elias said quietly, "the point of no reversal." Nyxara searched his face, not for permission but confirmation. "Do you trust me?" she asked. The question was not symbolic, not rhetorical, it was operational. "Yes," Elias said without hesitation. Something in her expression softened, not weakness but release. She leaned in, forehead to forehead. The contact was brief, measured, intentional, the core locked. A sound, not an alarm, not a signal, reverberated through the station. A low, resonant tone that carried finality. Nyxara inhaled sharply, body tensing as the feedback surged, then steadied. Elias felt it too, a sense of alignment snapping into place, as if something long out of phase had finally resolved. "It's done," he said softly. Nyxara closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. When she opened them, something fundamental had changed. The station's lights stabilized into a new baseline. The hum softened into a constant, living presence. The core had accepted them, together. Nyxara stepped back slowly, reclaiming her composure with practiced precision, but she did not rebuild the distance entirely. "From this moment forward," she said, voice steady, "the compact will register this system as co-governed." Elias swallowed. "That's unprecedented." "Yes," she said, "and dangerous." She met his gaze fully, but necessary. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Nyxara reached out, not to touch him again, but to reclaim the neural dampener. She fastened it at her throat with a decisive motion. "Do not mistake this," she said. "What we have done is not indulgence." "I wouldn't dare," Elias replied. "It is alignment," she continued, "and alignment carries obligation." He nodded. "I'm still here." Her eyes. The arrival of the compact delegation did not come with ceremony. No banners, no music, no public address. Just a shift in the station's gravitational balance as 3 Aurelian cruisers slid into synchronized orbit. Their presence felt more than seen. The Astrovault responded instantly. Security protocols escalating, corridors sealing, command channels lighting up with controlled urgency. Elias stood in the observation gallery, hands clasped behind his back, watching the cruisers align with mechanical perfection. He felt the core's awareness sharpen, its resonance tightening like a held breath. They know, he thought, not everything, but enough. Civilian work. Nyxara's voice cut through the ambient hum behind him. Calm, controlled, public, he turned. She wore full command regalia now, high collar, insignia restored, neural dampener active. Supreme Executor Nyxara Valen, restored to her official form so completely that, for a fraction of a second, Elias wondered if the intimacy of the core chamber had been imagined. Then he saw her eyes, steady, certain. "Delegation requests your presence," she said, "as an observer." "As a suspect," Elias corrected quietly. Nyxara did not deny it. "They detected the Corps' reclassification," she said. "Co-governance is unsettling to them." "And to you?" Elias asked. Her gaze met his briefly, just long enough. "No," she said. The council chamber was a crescent of polished obsidian and light, its architecture designed to place all attention at the center. 3 Aurelian delegates stood at the far arc, their forms tall, luminous, and unmistakably political. "Supreme Executor," the central delegate said, voice layered with harmonic authority. "We have detected an anomaly in the Astrovault's command alignment." Nyxara inclined her head, respectful, not submissive. "The Corps has adapted," she replied. "Without compact authorization," another delegate said sharply. "With compact survival as its priority," Nyxara countered. Elias felt the room shift. This was not a technical discussion. It was a challenge. "Our records indicate the presence of a non-Aurelian influence," the central delegate continued. "A civilian human." All eyes turned to Elias. "State your function," the delegate commanded. Elias felt the weight of the moment settle fully. One sentence could define his role as collaborator or contaminant. Before he could speak, Nyxara did. "He is my advisor," she said, the word echoed. Advisor. The delegates froze just for a fraction of a second, but Elias saw it, heard it in the disruption of their harmonic cadence. "You elevate a human civilian to advisory proximity?" one asked. "On a system of this magnitude?" "Yes," Nyxara said simply. "Explain." Nyxara turned not to the delegates but to Elias, just slightly, an invitation. "A risk." Elias stepped forward. "The Corps was built to ensure coherence between authority and outcome," he said steadily. It detected a threshold where singular command was no longer sufficient for systemic stability. But the delegate's eyes narrowed. "And you represent what?" the central one asked. "A variable," Elias replied. "One that introduces reflective intent rather than unilateral execution." "That is a weakness," the delegate snapped. "No," Elias said, holding their gaze. "It's a safeguard." Silence stretched. Nyxara's voice entered the space again, firm, unmistakable. "The Corps now recognizes alignment through convergence," she said, "not obedience. It reflects the future the compact claims to want." "And what future is that?" a delegate demanded. "One where authority adapts," Nyxara said, "or becomes obsolete." The Corps pulsed. Once low, final, every delegate felt it. Elias felt Nyxara's presence beside him, not touching, not signaling, but unmistakably aligned. The system recognized them both, and it did not hide that fact. "You are binding compact stability to a personal alignment," the central delegate said slowly. "That is unprecedented." "So was the compact," Nyxara replied. A dangerous silence followed. Then, "We will observe," the delegate said at last. "This configuration will be reviewed." Nyxara inclined her head again, dismissal without concession. The delegation withdrew. The chamber seals disengaged. Only when they were alone again did Nyxara exhale. "That," Elias said quietly, "was not subtle." "No," she agreed, "it was decisive." She turned to him fully now, regalia and all, and her voice dropped just enough to be private. "You placed yourself in their sight," she said. "They will not forget you." Elias met her gaze. "Neither will the Corps." Something like approval flickered in her eyes. "You chose visibility," she said. Yet, the station felt different after the delegates left. Not quieter. If anything, the Astrovault was more alive than ever, but sharper, as if every corridor and conduit were aware it was being watched. The Corps' resonance no longer ebbed into the background. It remained present, a constant, deliberate awareness threading through the metal and light. Elias noticed it most when Nyxara wasn't near, which was new. He stood alone in the auxiliary observation ring, hands resting on the cold glass of the viewport, watching the blue star shed another silent flare. His reflection stared back at him, calm on the surface, but carrying a tension he hadn't felt in years. This was the cost of visibility. Footsteps approached behind him. He didn't turn. "You are avoiding the central sectors," Nyxara said, "not accusation, observation." "Yes," Elias replied. "I needed to think." She stopped beside him, close but not touching. No regalia this time, just the black attire she wore when she wasn't performing authority. The neural dampener remained in place, but he could sense her awareness regardless. "The delegation will not allow this alignment to persist without contingency," she said. "They will demand resolution." "And by resolution," Elias said quietly, "you mean separation." Nyxara didn't answer immediately. "That is one of the outcomes under consideration," she said at last. The words landed heavier than Elias expected. "If the compact decides the risk outweighs the benefit," she continued, "they may require reassignment. One of us removed from proximity to the core." Elias nodded slowly. "Me." "Yes." There it was, no pretense, no comfort, the truth. "They can't force you," Elias said. "They can," Nyxara replied. "Indirectly, through treaty pressure. Strategic leverage. Consequences I am responsible for." He turned then, meeting her gaze fully. "And what do you want?" he asked. For a long moment Nyxara said nothing. When she did speak, the words came carefully, as if precision were the only thing holding something far more dangerous in check. "I have spent my entire life ensuring that my personal inclinations never interfered with structural stability," she said. "Every desire subordinated, every impulse evaluated for cost." Her eyes softened, not with weakness but with exposure. "And now," she continued, "I am confronted with something that does not diminish stability, but redefines it." Elias felt his chest tighten. "That sounds like an argument in favor of fighting," he said. "Yes," she replied, "it does." "Then why does it feel like goodbye?" he asked. Nyxara closed her eyes briefly. "Because there are forms of loss that occur even when you stand your ground." She stepped closer. This time there was no hesitation. Her hand came to rest against his arm, not possessive, not tentative. Anchoring. "When the delegation questioned you," she said quietly, "you did not defer to me." "I didn't want to speak for you," Elias replied. "No," she said, "you spoke with me." Her fingers tightened just slightly. "That has not happened to me before." The confession hung between them, fragile and unmistakably real. "I need to know something," Nyxara said, "and you must answer honestly." Elias nodded. "Always." "If the compact orders your removal," she said, voice steady but low, "and I cannot prevent it without destabilizing the entire alliance, will you resent me?" The question cut deeper than any threat. Elias didn't answer immediately. He thought of the quiet life he'd chosen, the safety of distance, the comfort of being unseen. Then he thought of the core chamber, of alignment, of the way the station responded when they stood together. "No," he said at last, "but I would grieve." Her breath caught. "And if I choose to defy them?" she asked. "If I prioritize this alignment over political equilibrium?" Elias met her eyes, heart steady despite the stakes. "Then I would stay," he said. "Not because you asked, but because I chose to." Nyxara studied him with an intensity that bordered on reverence. "This is not attachment," she said. "It is recognition." "Yes," Elias agreed. The core pulsed, once, twice. The station lights dimmed imperceptibly, shifting into a warmer spectrum. The system wasn't reacting to touch this time. It was responding to truth. Nyxara leaned forward, forehead resting briefly against his. The contact was intimate but restrained, an acknowledgement rather than a claim. "I do not know what the compact will decide," she said. "But I know this. Whatever happens, what we established cannot be undone." Elias closed his eyes for a moment, letting the certainty settle. "Then we face it," he said, "even if it means letting go without denying what this was." Nyxara drew back slowly. Her expression had changed, not hardened but clarified. "Rest," she said softly. "Tomorrow they will demand answers." "And tonight?" Elias asked. Her gaze lingered on him longer than was strictly safe. "Tonight." The compact's decision arrived at dawn. Not announced, not broadcast. It entered the astrovault the way authority always did, quietly, formally, and with the expectation of obedience. Elias stood beside Nyxara in the central chamber as the transmission unfolded. 3 delegates appeared as luminous projections, their harmonic voices stripped of ornament. "Supreme Executor Valen," the central delegate said. "After review, the compact has reached a resolution." Nyxara did not move, did not speak. Elias felt the core's resonance tighten, not alarmed, not defensive, attentive. "The alignment anomaly aboard the astrovault will be preserved," the delegate continued. "The system has demonstrated measurable stability gains under its current configuration." A pause. "However," the delegate added, "the compact cannot sanction permanent co-governance without precedent." Elias felt the words before they were spoken. "The human civilian, Elias Rurk, will be reassigned." Nyxara's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "To where?" she asked. "There is a research installation beyond compact jurisdiction," the delegate replied. "An autonomous node. The core will retain synchronized access, but physical proximity will be suspended." Suspended, not severed, Elias exhaled slowly. "And Supreme Executor Valen?" Nyxara asked. "You will remain," the delegate said, "as singular authority." The core pulsed, once, low, not approval, recognition. The transmission ended. Silence followed, not the brittle kind, but something quieter, accepting. Nyxara turned to Elias. "This is their compromise," she said. "Distance without erasure." He nodded. "They're afraid of what happens if we stay too close." "Yes," she said, "and more afraid of what happens if they force us apart entirely." She stepped closer, not as ruler, not as symbol, as herself. "I could contest this," she said. "Push harder, risk fracture." Elias searched her face, saw the calculation, the restraint, the cost. "And destabilize what we've built?" he asked gently. Nyxara closed her eyes briefly. "No," she said. "That would turn alignment into defiance. That is not what this is." She reached for him then, not urgently, not possessively. Her hand rested against his chest, steady and sure. "This does not end because we are separated," she said. "It endures because it was chosen." Elias covered her hand with his own. "I know," he said, "the core knows." As if in response, the station's hum shifted, subtle, precise. A new equilibrium. Nyxara leaned in, resting her forehead against his for a brief moment. The contact was quiet, intimate, and final in a way that did not feel like loss. "When you leave," she said softly, "the compact will believe they have restored order." "And have they?" Elias asked. Nyxara's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "They have postponed transformation," she said, "not prevented it." Hours later, Elias stood at the departure bay. The transport shuttle waited, systems warm, destination coordinates already locked. Beyond the viewport the blue star burned, fading, collapsing, inevitable. Nyxara stood a short distance away, hands clasped behind her back. Supreme Executor, but her eyes were only his. "You will feel the core," she said, "not as command, as continuity." "I already do," Elias replied. She inclined her head. "And I will hear it," she added, "when it recalibrates around your absence." He smiled faintly. "Then it will learn patience." Nyxara stepped forward one last time. "No witnesses, no ceremony, just honesty." "You asked me once," she said quietly, "whether I intended to remain singular." "And?" Elias asked. "I no longer measure myself that way," she replied. The shuttle doors began to close. As Elias stepped inside, he felt it, the core's resonance stretching, adapting, holding the alignment without proximity, a promise without demand. The doors sealed. The shuttle disengaged. As it pulled away from the Astra vault, Elias watched the station recede into the star's glow. He did not feel abandoned. He felt connected. Back on the station, Nyxara stood alone in the central chamber. The core pulsed. Once. Twice. Steady, she placed a hand against the platform, not to command, not to test, to acknowledge. "Begin long-range synchronization," she said.